Hi there, boys and girls. It's so good to be with you. I am excited about the book that I chose to read today. It's called The Bee Tree, and it's by Patricia Polacco. And it has lots and lots of the vibrant colors we've talked about this week. And also, it talks a little bit about how sometimes when you're practicing a lot of schoolwork, in this case reading specifically, it gets a little bit tiring and sometimes you need a break. And in this book they talk about a pretty creative way of taking a break that I think you'll enjoy. It is a piece of realistic fiction, I would say, although it's another kind of biographical story by Patricia Polacco about the time that she was a child on a farm in Michigan and what happened with all of her neighbors and things like that. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the story were actually more of a true story, more of a nonfiction story. It has lots of the same names in it that we heard in The Trees of the Dancing Goats, the family names of the neighbors that lived around them on surrounding farms in Michigan. And it's a pretty fun adventure. She had the good fortune of growing up in a home with both her grandmother and her grandfather, and lots of you I know have that opportunity as well, and you're so lucky to have that opportunity. So it's fun to be able to spend time with your family, and some of us have family that's very far away, and some of us have family who are living in the very places that we're living in. In either scenario, it's always a treat to spend time with them and to learn from them. And in this case, she has a chance to learn from her grandfather. So it's called The Bee Tree. I'm tired of reading, Grandpa, Mary Ellen sighed. I'd rather be outdoors running and playing. So, you don't feel like reading, eh? Feel like running, do you? Then I expect this is just the right time to find a bee tree, he said, taking down a jar and putting on his lucky hat. What's a bee tree, Grandpa? Mary Ellen asked. Well, it's where the bees make their home. It's where they keep the honey, the sweetest in the land, Grandpa chirped excitedly. But we already have honey, Grandpa, Mary Ellen said. Ah, but not honey like this, her grandpa answered with a wink. Mary Ellen and her grandpa put on their coats and went outdoors. They walked down past the hollyhocks to the garden of the found bees, gathering pollen from flowers. Her grandpa carefully trapped some in the glass jar, making sure not to hurt them. When he was sure that they had enough, he smiled and leaned close to Mary Ellen. They'll take the pollen back to the hive and make it into honey, and we'll be right behind them. And then he slowly loosened the lid of the jar and let one single bee escape. It stayed on the mouth of the jar for a moment, flew straight up, and then buzzed toward the cornfield. Quick, now, run, Grandpa called as he began to chase the bee. Just then, Mrs. Govlock from down the creek was walking baby Sylvester in his carriage. Mary Ellen and her grandpa ran by them. We're off to find a bee tree today, Grandpa shouted. I haven't done that since I was a girl, Mrs. Govlock said excitedly. May I come too? Grandpa motioned her to follow, and the three of them were off and running. Baby Sylvester laughed out loud as his carriage bumped and bounced through the rows of corn. Honk, went a goose as it waddled after them. As they came from the cornfield and crossed Dietz Junction, Einar Tundevalt came around the bend in his squeaky old bike. Where are y'all going in such a hurry? He asked. A bee tree, Mary Ellen puffed as the foursome scurried by. Chasing a bee to its tree. This I would like to do also, he said as he stood up and pedaled faster. The wheels of his bike went tweddle, tweddle, squeak. Their boots slapped the ground, the buggy pitched and swayed, and the goose honked as they ran after that bee. The bee swooped down, stopped, held in midair, then circled past them and headed straight for the St. Joe River. Olaf Lundhagen, while strolling on the nearby shore with the charming Herman sisters Petra and Dorma, looked up and noticed the commotion coming toward them. "Where are you all going?" he called out. "To a bee tree we're going," Einar Tundevalt puffed as he pedaled by. "Can we come too?" the two lovely ladies pleaded. "Fast, you'll have to run," Einar said. "We don't care. Let's go," the three shouted as they raced after him. Slap, bump, honk, twaddle, twaddle, squeak, bump, they all went as they sped down the road after that one bee. Klondike! Bertha Fitchworth, just back from an expedition in the Yukon, had car trouble next to the road. She looked up just in time to see everybody running by. "You say you're after a bee tree," she shrieked. "Zounds, that won't be easy, but Eureka! What an adventure!" She sprinted along behind him. The bee dipped and soared as it made its way out of sight. But Grandpa carefully let another one out, and the chase was on again. The noisy, merry bunch galloped up over Bird Talk Fellow Ridge and only to run smack dab into Fiduciary Longdrop's herd of goats. The goats bleated and bucked as the people clamored through them. "What ho!" Fiduciary called out. "You're going to scare me goats!" "A bee tree!" a voice called back. With that, Fiduciary tooted his flute and he and his flock joined the chase. "Bounding Billies, this'll be great," he said, on a dead run. Three traveling musicians looked up just in time to see a thundering stampede of goats, buggies, people, bikes, coming straight for them. "Why are they all running, Pa?" one of the boys asked his father. "We're after that bee," Grandpa said, pointing at the small dot in the sky. "It's leading us to a bee tree," Mary Ellen wailed as she streaked by them. "Come on along! Klondike!" Bertha chortled as she huffed past. Slap, bump, bleat, honk, twaddle, twaddle, squeak, bump, they went as they ran. Hoofs clattered, rows of corn were parted. Nothing really mattered but chasing that bee. They ran through Griner Bluffs and into Bishop's Meadow, around Dead Man's Tree, and then to Bird Talk Hollow. As they ran down the hollow, the bee took blinding speed and disappeared from their sight. They all stopped to catch their breath just in front of Dunk's Woods. Grandpa handed the jar with the last bee in it to Mary Ellen, and she let it out. Sure enough, it flew, straight and low, right into Dunk's Woods. "It's the bee tree," Grandpa whispered. "That's where the honey will be, but we'll need plenty of smoke." Everyone set about to build a smoke fire from twigs and damp leaves. When the smoke had quieted the bees, Grandpa balanced on Einar's bicycle and reached into the tree. So I want to stop there real quickly because you might be wondering, why would they need to make a fire and smoke with the bees? Well, we don't tend to have as many bees as other places might have, but in a place like this farm in Michigan, or this farmland in Michigan, they have lots of beehives that might have thousands and thousands and thousands of bees living in one tree. And in this case, you can see the tree, and it's probably a hollowed out tree, meaning it's not alive anymore, and the bees take over the inside of the tree and make their hive inside the tree, which isn't the safest place to be if you are there trying to collect honey. So one of the strategies that the experts use to calm the bees down and to quiet them down is to build a fire with smoke, because the bees don't like the smoke. And so they might fly away and let the people go in and collect some honey, or they might just quiet down to a point where they are not going to sting the people who are trying to get the honey out. So taking the honey from a beehive isn't something that you'd want to try on your own without somebody who actually knew a lot about what they were doing, or you are going to get stung, and probably many, many, many times. But in this case, and in this story, they're talking about a way that beekeepers or bee experts can gather the honey from the bees' hives, and then the bees just continue to make more. So that's what's happening here with the smoke. So they've got this pile of leaves directly behind the tree where the beehive is, And you can see a little wisp of smoke coming up from the pile. But there's probably quite a bit more, really. As he pulled out small pieces of honeycomb, he dropped them into some of baby Sylvester's spare clean diapers that Klondike Bertha was holding. Mary Ellen tied them into neat little bundles, and Mrs. Lundhagen put them into the baby carriage. The musicians played merrily as the Herman sisters danced. Grandpa invited everyone back to the house for baking powder biscuits, fresh brewed tea, and of course, the honey. There was music, dancing, tall tales, and ruckus laughter as they all buzzed about the sweet adventure of the day. Ruckus laughter. Ruckus means crazy, loud, exciting, a little bit out of control sometimes. And a much quieter time. You can tell they're much quieter without all of the people and partying and honey to eat. Grandpa took Mary Ellen inside away from the crowd. Now, child, I'm going to show you what my father showed me and his father before him, he said quietly. He spooned the honey onto the cover of one of her books. Taste, he said, almost in a whisper. Mary Ellen savored the honey on her book. That means she really took her time to taste it and experience the sweetness in her mouth. There is such sweetness inside of that book, too, he said thoughtfully. Such things, adventure, knowledge, wisdom. But these things do not come easily. You have to pursue them. Just like when we ran after the bees to find their tree. You must do also the chasing of these things through the pages of a book. And then he smiled and hugged her. So I want you to think about that when you're thinking about working at home and learning in a different way than you have before. Think about how there are so many things to learn and so many important things that you can learn, whether you're at school or whether you're at home, and take breaks. Do things like they did, chasing after the bee to the bee tree. Not in big groups of people right now, but certainly in your imagination and in ways that you can take breaks from your learning so that when you're learning, you can soak it all up and savor the things that you learn, meaning that you're hearing them and taking them completely in. So enjoy your time and enjoy your learning and enjoy listening to and reading books. And I'll see you again very soon.